Hello all, welcome back. Today we will see a series of questions and answers which are related to the software testing concepts and are generally asked when you appear for a QA job profile role. They will basically go ahead and ask you these particular questions. So let's cover these one by one. So the first question is, what is software testing? So it's simple. Software testing is the process of verifying and validating that a software application works as expected and is free of defects, or it has a minimum defect which can and we can go ahead with that particular product. Going to the next question, what is the difference between verification and validation? This is very frequently asked, so please take a note of it. Verification is nothing but are we building the product right? So it includes checking the documents, okay, the designs, maybe the test cases should be correct and those things, kind of a static testing. What is validation? Validation is are we building the right product? So once the actual testing is started or the testing the actual software, there we basically validate the software. Third question, what is SDLC? So SDLC stands for Software Development Life Cycle, and it's a process which is used to design, develop and test a software. Okay, so it will have a lot of things like requirements will be there, then designing will happen, then the development team will write the code, then testing will be performed on the developed piece of code. Then if testing is done and it is good to be deployed, then deployment will be done to production, and then a team will kind of do the maintenance and monitoring of the application which is deployed. Coming to fourth question, what is STLC? So it is software testing lifecycle. Okay, so SDLC is a software development lifecycle and STLC is a software testing lifecycle, and it revolves around testing, and it includes requirement analysis, test planning, test case design, execution and test closure. So yeah. Fifth question, what is a test case? So test case, as all of you should have written some test case or should have a knowledge of it. So it's a kind of a set of steps. It will have some inputs, okay, the expected results and what test data we are using, and this is used to kind of execute our test scripts or verify the functionality. Sixth question, what is test scenario? Okay, so test scenario is nothing but a high level description of what to test. So let's say there is something we need to test around login functionality. So to test the login functionality, that will come under test scenario, and when we will go with each and every details of that login functionality, like launch the browser, then input username, password, like those things, then it will get covered as a test case. So remember, test scenario is a high level kind of a thing and test case is a detailed thing. Question 7, what is the difference between test case and test scenario? Again, I already explained, but let's go through it. So test scenario, this is a high level idea of what we are going to test, and test case, these are detailed steps with data and expected results, like what we are going to test and how it looks. Okay, what is a bug and a defect? Let's see. So a bug is let's say we test an application and if any mismatch is there between the expected results and the actual outcome, then we raise a bug or a defect. So that's the process. So a bug is a mismatch between expected and actual result. Okay, then let's see, this is very important question. What is severity and priority in case of bugs? Okay, so severity is how serious the defect is, means how much the defect is impacting your system. The second thing is priority. Priority is how urgent we need the defect to be fixed. Okay, so severity is like how much impact the bug is having on your application, and priority is how urgent we need to fix that particular bug. Okay, and then these are they may ask you in the interview, give me some examples where we have high severity and high priority. Okay, so in that case, when let's say a application is there and login is not working, so that is very high severity defect, okay, as well as a high priority. We need to fix this as soon as possible. Okay, then let's say, what is an example of high severity and low priority defect? So let's say application crashes when we click on a rarely used help button. So let's say you have an application and when you click on a help button, it crashes. So its severity is high because the whole application will crash once someone clicks on help button, but priority will be low because there will be very few or rare cases when someone will go to the help button and click it. So that is one example. Then we have an example for, let's say, low severity and high priority. Okay, so let's see. So let's say in your software or in your application, if there are spelling mistakes or kind of a logo mistakes, okay, so that will not impact your software as a whole. Okay, so all the process or the functionalities will work as expected, so the severity will be low, but the priority will be very high because that will impact the brand image or the company's name. So that's the reason it is a low severity but a high priority defect. We need to fix it as soon as possible. The fourth one is a low severity and low priority defect. Okay, let's say as an example, there is a misalignment of text in footer section, or let's say you have an application, okay, and there is a little bit of misalignment regarding the text or one text, or there is a misalignment in the format of text or those things. So those are very kind of a cosmetic defects and won't impact your application much. So that is the reason those will be low severity, low priority. So please take a note of this one. You will definitely get a question on this severity and priority thing. Okay, going to the 10th question, what is regression testing? So there are a lot of testing types. So one of them is a regression testing. So it is nothing but testing the existing functionality after changes to ensure nothing is broken. Let's say in your application or your product, some new features are implemented. Then to ensure that that particular new implementation is not breaking any previous things in the software, we will do a regression test. So that is regression testing. What is retesting? So testing the same defect again after it is fixed. So let's say once we test the application, we observe some deviation, so we raise a defect. Okay, now what developer will do, they will fix the defect and they will assign it back to the QA team. So as our role or what we need to do, we need to again retest the defect and then say that whether the defect is working or whether the defect is again observed. So all those things comes under retesting. Okay, what is smoke testing? So smoke testing is a basic testing to check if build is stable enough for further testing. So it's a kind of a quick testing of the overall application. It's a very kind of a testing the basic features of the application and ensuring that everything is working, and it is kind of a, it can be used, the build what is provided, it can be used for further testing. So that is smoke testing. What is sanity testing? So these two are kind of a bit confusing, so please go through them. They will definitely ask you what is smoke testing and what is sanity testing and what is the difference between them. So let's say what is sanity testing. So sanity testing is a quick testing of specific functionality after minor changes. So in case of smoke testing, we basically check the whole application. Throughout the application we do a testing, but in sanity testing we generally test a specific functionality after minor changes, or let's say after a defect is kind of fixed in that case. And let's see what is the difference between smoke and sanity testing. So smoke testing is wide and shallow. Wide means we are checking basically all the major features of the application, and it's very shallow. Shallow means we are not going deep into the testing. We will just check the basic things over there. And what is sanity testing? It is narrow and deep. What it means, it will basically check for a specific module and we will do a lot of testing around that module. That's the reason it is narrow and deep. So just have these terms in mind. They can ask you in the interview. Okay, coming to the next question, what is black box testing? So see, in our application or whatever portal or anything, whatever you are testing, codes, basically some coding language will be used in that particular application. So as a tester, most of us will not have an understanding of the internal code or logic, but we have to do the testing. So that is nothing but a black box testing, right? When we are testing without knowing the internal code and we are just focusing on, let's say, what is the input and what is the expected output, that is called a black box testing. So most of the time we will be doing this black box testing, because we will not go ahead and check what is there in the code, right? What is how the development team coded the application. So that's the thing. Then it comes, what is white box testing? So this is nothing but when you do the testing and you have the knowledge of the internal code, right? You are able to check the code of the application, like how the loops are there or which condition is failing, like that, or you are kind of debugging that application. So that is a white box testing. So here you will also have the access to the code, right? So this is also frequently asked. So what is the black box, what is the white box, and what type of testing you basically do in your project. Then there is a gray box testing which falls between this black and a white box. So that's a gray box testing. So it's the combination of black box and white box. Okay, now we have what is UAT. So UAT stands for user acceptance testing. So what is UAT? So this is a testing is done by the end user to ensure system meets business needs. So basically when the code is ready, all the testing is done, and it is going to be delivered to the end users, they will do a kind of a testing to ensure that the things are working as expected. So this is called a user acceptance testing. Okay, what is functional testing? So functional testing is testing like what is the input, what are the expected output of the app, of the product. So it is testing against features, right, mentioned in the requirement. So this is a functional testing. So we will basically provide test data and we will check for output, and we will compare the input and output with whatever requirements we have been provided. So that is functional testing. Then comes non-functional testing. So non-functional testing is here we don't test the functionality of the system, but what we test for performance. Let's say we test usability, security, and these things, like how secure the application is or how fast the application is responding. Let's say there is a login functionality, we provide the username, password, click on login. So how soon the application gets logged in or the user gets logged in. So those kind of parameters comes under the non-functional testing. Let's see question number 21. What is boundary value analysis, or short form is BVA? So here testing is done at the boundary levels. Okay, so let's say we have an example where we need to test for an age criteria from 18 to 16 years, right? So here we will test along the boundaries, like we will test for 17 years, we will test for 18 years, we will test for something in between the ranges like 19 and 59, and we will test something around the exit boundary. So we will test 59 years what is happening, 60 years what is happening, and 61 years what is happening. So this is something which is called a boundary value analysis, because we are doing the testing around the edge cases. Edge cases means if 18 is the lowest limit, we are testing around 17, 18, and 19 years. And if 60 is the maximum limit, we are testing around 59, 60, and 61 years, like that. Okay, coming to next question, what is equivalence partitioning? So this is also a testing technique where we basically divide the test cases into valid and invalid groups. So let's say there is a testing criteria where we need to test the password field. Okay, let's say the requirement is password length should be from 8 to 15 characters. So what we will basically form our test case, we will do some partition on the test data. So let's say our test case will be if the password length is less than 8 characters, then it should be invalid password, right? Let's say if the password length is between 8 to 15 characters, then it is a valid password. Okay, and similarly, if the password length is more than 15 characters, then it is a invalid password. So these partitions, what we decide is what is called a equivalence partitioning. Okay, coming to the next question, what is a test plan? So a test plan is a document which you will prepare when you will start the testing. So it will have some basic details in it, like what is the scope of testing, right? What we are going to test in that particular testing phase, what approach we will take to do the testing. Maybe we will do the automated test, or we will do some kind of API testing. Like that, we need to mention the approach. We need to mention the resources as in which particular testers will be working on this. Let's say we have Raghav, we have Shyam, like that. How many testers are there? Basically, we need to provide the resource details, and then what will be the schedule of testing. like when we will basically start the testing, when we are expected to finish the testing. Like that, we need to mention the schedule as well. Then what is a test strategy? We have seen what is a test plan. Now let's check what is a test strategy. So test strategy is a high level document, right? So test plan is a detailed document, but test strategy, it's a kind of a high level document which will define your testing approach for the overall project. So always remember, test strategy is a high level. It gives a broader view of the project, and test plan is derived from test strategy, and it is more refined things like what we will do when we will start the testing. So they will ask in the interview what is the test plan, what is test strategy, and what is the basic difference between these two. Coming to the next question, what is a traceability matrix, or what is RTM? RTM stands for Requirement Traceability Matrix. So this is also a very common question. So let's see. These are nothing but it will basically map your requirement with the test case, and it will ensure that we are having a kind of a full coverage, or we are covering what is expected while doing the testing. So this is the RTM. Basically, you can prepare this RTM document in an Excel sheet, or maybe there are various tools which can generate the RTM. So this will map your test cases to the requirements. Coming to the next question, what is a defect lifecycle? So whenever we observe something like if the actual value is not matching with the expected outcome, then we raise a defect, right? So let's see what is the life cycle of it. So these are the stages. Below are the stages for which a defect will go through. So first, let's say when we will observe a defect, we will log the defect. So in that case, it will be under a new phase. Then we will assign it to a particular developer. So it will move to assigned. Then the developer will start working on the defect, and he will mark the defect as open. Once he fixes the code, or once the defect is fixed, he will mark the status as fixed. Now it will come to the QA bucket, right, to us to do a retesting. Then we will mark the status as a retest, and once all the testing is done, the defect is no more observed and things are working as expected, we will mark the defect as closed. Okay, let's say if the defect is again observed, it's not working as expected even after the code deployment, then again we can go ahead and mark the defect as open. Again, it will follow the same cycle from here. Okay, next question is, what is exploratory testing? So this is nothing but we are kind of doing testing without predefined test cases. So let's say there is an application, there is a brand new application, and we don't have enough documentation for it or requirements for it. In that case, we will take the application, explore the application, means we will launch the application, go to various tabs, we will see how the application behaves with different inputs. So that is what is called a exploratory testing. So we don't have predefined test case or predefined requirement, but we will test the application and we will figure out how the application is behaving. So this is exploratory testing. This is generally done in the very beginning phase when we don't have enough documentation. Next question, what is ad hoc testing? So ad hoc testing is nothing but it's kind of a randomly testing the application without any planning or a documentation. Okay, and what is the test data? So whenever we do a testing, we will require a lot of test data. So test data is nothing but these are the input values which we provide to the application to execute our test cases. Let's say there is an application, we need to log into that application. So as an input value, we will provide some username, some password, right? So those are nothing but the test data. What is exit criteria? So exit criteria are the conditions that must be met before stopping testing. Okay, so let's say when we are going to close the testing, there will be some criteria which should be met, or requirements which should be covered. So if we cover those requirements, then we are good to close the testing. So those requirements or those conditions are nothing but the exit criteria. Okay, then what is alpha testing? So alpha testing is nothing but in this particular testing is done internally, okay, among the QA team, among the development team. before releasing the product to the users. So whatever testing is done before releasing the product to the users, that comes under alpha testing. So basically the QA team, development team will work on this alpha testing. What is beta testing? Beta testing is done by the real users or the end users before finally releasing the product. So let's say the product is ready. The QA team, development team already did their testing. Now the product is ready to be released into the market. So a certain pool of real users will test the application. That testing is called a beta testing. Then what is static testing? Static testing is testing without executing the code. So we will not do a testing of the application, okay, but rather we will do some walkthroughs, maybe the test case walkthrough. We will do some reviews. We will review the test strategy, test plan, whatever we have prepared. We will do some inspection, right? Those things will come under the static testing. So here no real testing is happening in the application, just we are doing the review, we are doing the walkthrough like that of the documents. Then what is dynamic testing? Dynamic testing is here where we actually test the application. Okay, so we will execute the application and we will check what is the expected behavior. Coming to the next question, what is integration testing? So integration testing is a testing where we test integration between modules. So any application, it will be divided into various modules, and how those modules basically behave between themselves, that particular testing is called integration testing. So as an example, let's say there's a portal, it is having a login page and a dashboard page. So testing that particular connectivity, how the data is getting into the system via login, how the details are getting shown in the dashboard page, those kinds of testing are called as a integration testing. It will test between modules. Then what is system testing? System testing is the complete testing of the application as a whole. So this will test the entire application as one. Okay, so all the modules of the application will be tested under system testing. What is end-to-end testing? It's also, the short form is E2E testing. So when they say E2E, it's end-to-end testing. So end-to-end testing is kind of a testing the complete flow from start to end. So there is an application. So from start to end, if we are testing that application, that will come under the E2E testing. As an example, you can see over here, there's a, let's say there is a certain portal. We are logging into the portal. We are, let's say, adding some items into the cart, and when we are doing the payment. So this is a kind of a whole flow. That's the end-to-end testing. What is acceptance criteria? So these are the conditions that must be met for the feature to be accepted. So these are some conditions or criterias in testing which should be there before the product is ready to be shipped or the product is ready to be deployed. So those criterias or conditions are called acceptance criteria. Then what is defect leakage? So defect leakage is just a second. Yeah, defect leakage is a term. Let's say when a defect is missed by QA and found in production. So let's say there was a deployment done. We started doing the testing as a QA, but anyways or somehow we missed some defects and it went to production. So that particular leakage of defects is what is called as a defect leakage. So it was not identified into the QA phase and it went for production. So this is a defect leakage, and as a tester we should minimize this as much as we can. So there should not be any kind of a defect leakage from lower environment to higher environment like production. So we need to revisit our test cases, write some more good test cases, do some regression so that defect leakage can be minimized. What is a defect density? So this is the number of defects per module or lines of code. Let's say there is an application, there is a module, let's say the login module. So how many defects are there in the login functionality? That particular parameter is called as a defect density. So in an application, there might be various modules, like login module can be there, dashboard page or dashboard module can be there. So different modules can have different defect density. So remember this particular term. What is test coverage? Test coverage is the percentage of requirements covered by test cases. So when we write test cases, we link it to the requirement. So, and when we execute the test cases, so those requirements also get executed or fulfilled. So that percentage is called as a test coverage. What is a risk-based testing? So risk-based testing is a testing where we perform the testing based on risk priority. So the whole application or whole test cases can be identified based on some risk parameter. Let's say there is some critical test case or a critical module that can be a very high priority. So executing those test cases first will justify the testing process. So that is called as a risk-based testing. So the focus will be on the more critical areas, and some low critical test cases or less risk test cases, those can be executed later at a later point of time. So that is called risk-based testing. Then what is compatibility testing? So testing on different browsers, devices, or operating system is called as a compatibility testing. Let's say there is a application, so how that application behaves on different browsers. Okay, let's say Chrome, Edge, Firefox, how the application is behaving on these browsers, or how the application is behaving on various devices, like how it is performing on laptop versus how it is performing on mobile phones. So all those testing will come under the compatibility testing. And also the different operating system. Okay, maybe on Windows, how it is behaving, on Linux, how it is behaving, on Mac OS, how it is behaving. All these will come under your compatibility testing. Then what is cross-browser testing? So this is very simple. You need to test the application on multiple browsers. So there are various browsers. We have Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari, and so on. So we need to test our application on different browsers as mentioned in the requirement. So that is called a cross-browser testing. What is performance testing? So we know about what is functional testing, like comparing the actual outcome with the expected outcome. That is called as a functional testing. But what is performance testing? Performance testing is where we basically check for the speed, scalability, and stability of the application. So we will check how the application is responding, right? Whether it is responding quickly or it is very slow, like that. Those particular parameters will fall under performance testing. What is load testing? Again, this is a sub part of performance testing, load testing. And in load testing, we test the system behavior under some user load. So in what we will do in load testing, we will put a lot of users on the particular application, and then we will test it how the application is behaving. And these users are not the real users. These are generated from some of the performance testing tools like JMeter. These will be some virtual users. Okay, let's say we will test any application with 50 virtual users, and then we will basically check the reports how the application is behaving. So that is called as a load testing. What is stress testing? Again, this is a part of a non-functional testing. In stress testing, we test the application or the system beyond its limit, and we find where the application breaks. So let's say there is a portal, let's say any portal, login portal or anything, and we will keep on kind of testing that application with a lot of users till the time that application crashes. So at that particular point of time where the breaking point comes for the application or the application crashes, that is generally referred to as a stress testing. What is spike testing? So spike, as you know, there is a kind of a sudden change in the system. So spike testing is nothing when we test the system in response to a sudden high load. So let's say for a very small period of time, there are a large number of users which come to the system. So that particular process is called as a spike testing. Then what is security testing? This is again a different domain of testing. So here we test the application or the system so as to ensure there are no vulnerabilities and threats to the system. Basically, we check whether the system is cannot be hacked easily and it is not compromised. So that comes under security testing. So a lot of banking domains and banking application, this will be a priority for them, security testing. What is usability testing? So this is we will check how user friendly the application is. So we need to ensure that the application is user friendly and most of the users can use the application without any difficulty. So basically navigating through the application, the icons of the application, those things should be user friendly. It should not be complicated. So that comes under usability testing. Then what is accessibility testing? So this is a testing where we test the application and ensure it works for people with disabilities. Let's say there are some people who have some kind of a color vision problem, right? Or they are not able to see properly the application. They have some kind of issues. So we need to make the application in such a way so that it can be accessed by these particular colleagues and they don't have any issue using the application. So that will be called as a accessibility testing. Then what is test environment? So this is the setup, or basically before the testing, actually where we will test the application. So whatever we will do the setup, that is called as a test environment. And what it will include, it will have some hardware, it will have the software and various tools to do the testing. Okay, it will have a lot of hardwares, like on what laptop or on what server we are doing the testing. Then it will have a lot of tools, maybe the automation tools, okay, the AI tools, what we need for our QA purposes to conduct the testing. So these things are called as a test environment. Then we will have some test data setup. Those things will come under the test environment. What is build? So build is nothing but a version of the application given by developers for testing. So once the development is done, the developers will ship the application to QA so that they can test it. So when they do so, they will provide a version to the application. So that is called as a build. What is test harness? It is simple. It's a collection of tools and data used to test an application. So this is a simple term. Whatever tools and whatever test data, right, you will use to test the application, that is called as a test harness. What is monkey testing? Monkey testing, as you know from the name, how a monkey behaves, it is very random. The same thing applies to testing over here. We do a random testing without any logic or without any test case or without any requirement. We just open the application and do a lot of random testing, like clicking on a button, okay, downloading some PDF, like those. That will all fall under monkey testing. Okay. Then what is gorilla testing? Gorilla testing is like testing a specific module or one module very heavily and repeatedly. So one of the module of the application, we do a very deep testing into that will come under a gorilla testing, and we will repeatedly do the testing for that module. What is error guessing? So when we perform the QA testing or we proceed with the testing, this is one of the principles which we have in mind, which is called as a error guessing. So here it based on the experience, right? Based on the experience, we will guess or identify what defects can actually occur in the application. So that is called as a error guessing. So finding defects based on experience. So that's the reason why experienced testers are required in a project, right? By keeping on testing a particular application for a long period of time, you will get an understanding basically which module is of the application is more error prone. Let's say like the dashboard, it's not working as expected. So based on experience, we can tell that that is called as a error guessing. Then what is shift left testing? So shift left is testing early in the development phase. So when the development will start for the product, we will start the testing at that point of time. That is called as a shift left testing. So basically we will get the requirements, we will start to frame the test cases, we will start to prepare the test data. Those will fall under the shift left testing. Then what is shift right testing? So shift right testing is called testing in production. Okay, when the application is deployed to production, then we will carry out the testing. That particular testing will what we call as a shift right testing. So here we will kind of monitor how the application is behaving and what is the feedback from the real users. Okay, then what is test automation? So these are some tools or scripts which we write to automate the test execution. So various tools are used, like you can have Tosca, okay, which is a licensed tool, or you can have Selenium. So Selenium with Java or Selenium with Python. So these are some of the tools by which we automate the test case and do the testing. So that will come under the test automation. But here we need to first select what test cases can be automated, and we need to prepare a suite for only those test cases which are likely to be automated, and then we basically perform this test automation. Then what is manual testing? Manual testing is nothing but it's done by humans, like when we do a testing manually without the use of any automation tools. That is called as a manual testing. So we will just launch the application, do the manual flow, check the application manually over there, and then we will document the results in the test cases. So that is called as a manual testing. Then when should we go for automation? So this is a very good question. They will always kind of ask you in the interviews. So the answer is we need to identify those test cases which will have some repetitive tasks, which are more of a regression test cases and which have some stable features. So these will be the prerequisites. Okay, your test cases should be a kind of a repetitive nature. It should be from a regression suite, and it should have some stable features, because unstable test cases, okay, those are very hard to automate and they will break a lot of time. So it won't be fruitful to automate those particular test cases. When should we not automate? So this is again like except these particular test cases, we should not go for automation. So let's see what we should not automate. So if there are frequent UI changes, okay, then we should not automate it, because the buttons will change, basically the location of web elements will change, and your test cases will fail very frequently. So we should avoid automating those particular test cases. Okay, and then there are some test cases which are kind of a one-time testing. Okay, we will just do testing of those test cases once, and maybe we will not pull them into the regression suite. So those test cases can be ignored for automation. And exploratory testing. So this is kind of a testing where we explore the application. So we do not need to have automate test case for them, because exploratory testing is done by without any kind of requirements, right? So we just explore the application, so we don't need automation over there. Coming to next question, what is continuous integration? So continuous integration is generally used by developers where they merge their code, and once they merge their code to the common repository, the automated test cases or their unit testing test cases are automatically triggered, and they get the results out of it. So that concept is called continuous integration. And what is continuous testing? So continuous testing is something which is used by the QA. So here, whatever automated test suite which we will have, we will implement it using the continuous testing, so that whenever a code is deployed by the developer, those automated test cases will be picked and those will be executed with the help of automation. So that is called as a continuous testing. So that's a continuous testing or a CI/CD pipeline. Then what is test estimation? So this is nothing but when we estimate how much testing effort we need, okay, or how much time we need to complete the testing, how much effort we need, and how many resources we would need to do the particular piece of task. So those things are called test estimation. What is bug report? Bug is nothing but a defect, so it's a kind of a defect report. Here we document the various details of the defect. Okay, what are the steps we need to follow to get to the particular defect, what are the expected actual results, okay, and the screenshots where the defect occurs. Those things will be documented in the bug report, and it will be shared to the development team so that they can have a look at it, and they can come to know exactly how to replicate that particular issue. So that is called as a bug report. Then what makes a good bug report? So bug report needs to be kind of a very detailed thing, so that whenever we pass this document to the developers, they easily go through it and they are able to replicate the defect. So a good bug report should contain some clear steps, like what we are doing to what are the steps so that the defect can be reproduced. Then it should have a proper severity and priority marked for the defect, and it should have all the screenshots, logs from automation or manual test cases which we faced during the execution. So these things should be there in the bug report. What is root cause analysis? So this is also called as a RCA. So this generally applies to defect. So whenever a defect is found out and the development team fixes that defect, they perform a root cause analysis or a RCA. There they basically go at a coding level and they find out the root cause which caused the defect. So they kind of find the actual cause for which the defect was raised. So that is called as a root cause analysis. What is test summary report? So once the testing is done, we need to submit this report to the business persons or the stakeholders, and it is just a normal report, and it will contain what is the final testing status, okay, what are the test results, coverage, and what defects we found. Those things will be mentioned in the test summary report. What is code coverage? So this is the percentage of code executed during testing. So whenever we will do the testing of a particular piece of application, then what percentage of code is covered, right, during the testing, that is called as a code coverage. So this ensures that most of the parts of code is getting covered during the testing process, and we are not kind of missing any critical things over there. Then what is flaky test? Flaky test is nothing but this is a kind of a test case which will sometimes pass or sometimes it will fail randomly, right? So these are called as a flaky test. So these arise when the application is not that much stable, or we might have some kind of a connectivity issue, right? In those cases, the test case might fail sometime, but if we re-execute the test case, it will pass at that point of time. So that's a flaky test, and it's very difficult to automate the flaky test because your automation might fail several times and it will pass at a later point of time. So these are flaky tests. Then what are the reasons of flaky test? What causes flaky test? So these are the few details of it. So timing issue. So maybe there might be a slight delay between loading up the actual buttons in the application or those things. So that is a timing issue or a sync issue. Then there will be network issues. Maybe our network is not proper. So whenever we are triggering some APIs, those are getting failed. So that might be one case. And then there can be some dynamic elements which are changing during runtime, right? So these are the reasons why your test case can get a flaky test, and it might fail in the automation running. Then what is CI/CD pipeline? We already discussed in the above parameters what is CI/CD. So it is a process where we automate the process for build, test, and deployment of the application. So this is called as a CI/CD pipeline. Coming to the next question, what is test metrics? So this is very important metrics. It covers all the testing progress, right? And it's used to track the testing progress. It will have details around what is the pass percentage, okay, how many test case got passed, how many test case got failed, what is the defect count, what is the defect density, and those things. So this will be a matrix, and the business colleagues will directly look into the test metrics, and they will kind of know what is the status of testing. So yeah, these are some of the common questions which are asked from a QA perspective. So please, before your interviews, go through the entire documentation which I have and the video which I have shared over here. And please let me know if this helped you. And also please like and subscribe my work. It will help me for future video making and my growth. Thanks.